You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome back to RBLR Lightning. My name is Jake Ricker, and as always, I got my great line mates with me, Matt Gannon, Joe Zamataro. Guys, welcome back to the show. Matt, how you doing today, my friend?
Jake, I'm doing great. It's been a good week for me personally. I'm happy to be here, happy to be back with you guys as always, but it's not about me. The show is about Joe. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, guys. It's the start of Gasparilla season, and oh man, it's the best time of the year by far, in my opinion. And the Bolts are coming back this week home for some games, so I'm doing wonderful, you guys.
Yeah, I got some home games to look forward this week. And speaking of what's going to be on the show, we got a lot to talk about in this one. Of course, we are going to look at some of the injury news. We're going to recap the game, look at what's coming up this week, and then also we're going our 3 stars of the week. And we'll have the All-Star Game, the Lightning Hall of Fame, and a new app, and so much more to talk about on this show. So that's what you have to look forward coming to you on this episode of RBR Lightning. But with that said, let's get right into things. We got a lot to check out and go over. And don't forget to always like and subscribe as well. So starting off with some injury news and roster updates. Guys, Nick Perbix unfortunately missed a couple of games in there. He is still out. It does look like he's closer and closer to being returned. He was at practice and practicing with the team, but has been held out, I think mostly as a precautionary reason. They haven't given any specific details on that, but Nick Perbix still out of the lineup right now. And then Pat Maroon, we just found out today after he took a hit in the Edmonton game, was a little bit shaken up. He is being evaluated now today to determine what exactly needs to be done, but it looks like Maroon is going to be missing a couple of games there. So kind of a bummer there for the Lightning to lose one of their grittier forwards, Joe.
Yeah, Pat Maroon is a big loss, not just on the ice, but also in the locker room. The intangibles that he brings. I mean, everybody that's watched has seen his personality on the ice, where he will take care of players. He takes care of the bench and morale. And then if someone roughs up one of our guys, he's right there on the spot, the first one to drop the gloves. So even though he's not somebody that gets on the score sheet every single night, he's someone that his presence is always felt by the team. And hopefully this is something that he bounces back from quickly. But with Balcers looking like he's about ready to step back in, it does kind of create a little bit of room there for a slot to open up without having to make a hard decision of who you're going to kick out of the lineup.
And it's unfortunate too, because I think Maroon's actually been playing some of his best hockey recently. I think he's kind of found a decent spot, or, a temporary decent spot with Colton and Paul. He's just been playing really well with them too. So it's kind of coming at an unfortunate time, but yeah, with Balcers coming back, it'd be nice to get him back in some games. Hopefully Maroon is not out too long, because he's not just a glue guy, he is the glue guy in the locker room. So it is a bigger hit to the team than first glance, but again, hopefully he's a pretty durable guy. Hopefully he can be back sooner than later.
Well, let's jump right into our game recaps for this week. Unfortunately, we have more losses to talk about than wins this week, but there's a lot to get into in some of these games. They were a very interesting road trip for the Lightning for sure, and I'll get your guys' thoughts on the overall road trip once we come down to the end. But let's start off with the win in Vancouver as the Lightning beat the Canucks by a final score of 5-2. Lightning played a pretty darn good game in this one. They were 49% in the faceoff circle, only 25 shots on goal, but pretty efficient when it comes to their shooting. 0 for 1 on the power play, and didn't have many chances on that, but none of that really matters, guys. Really, the most important thing in this game was the first goal of the game. It felt like forever, even though it was only a couple games in between. But Steven Stamkos has hit goal number 500. He started off with a bang, getting that first goal. And by the way, he scored 2 more goals in this game to hit a hat trick. He's one of the few players 500th goal in a night that he had a hat trick. But a big congratulations to Steven Stamkos, who gets his 500th goal, becoming the 47th player in NHL history to hit that marker. Just so exciting for him to finally hit that number. Guys, how excited were you when you saw him right in front of the net and you knew he was going to put that one in for number 500?
It seemed like it was happening in slow motion after Killorn made that beautiful toe drag move. Dude, we cannot underappreciate the assist from Killorn, but I saw the pass in slow motion and saw Steven Stamkos with a complete empty cage, and I just in that split second thought to myself, how is he going to hit the post on this one? Like, how's it not going to go in? But thank our stars. It finally went in. I was jumping up and down. It was a beautiful goal, the whole entire play. So I'm thankful it didn't happen on an empty net or nothing like that. I'm thankful it happened from the longest tenured bolt to the second longest tenured bolt. It couldn't have been scripted any better. So I was extremely happy. I'm extremely proud of him. And going back to him scoring a hat trick in the game that he gets his 500th goal, he is now the 8th player to do so. The 7 other players that have done that, all of them are in the Hall of Fame. So I think we're going to see number 8, not anytime soon, but he'll be on that list as well. So
that's funny. That's what I have pulled up right here on my phone. I actually took a screenshot of the stat that they put on, and that list is worth going through. Jean Beliveau, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Mark Messier, Brett Hall, Jaromir Jagr, and Matt Sundin, and now Steven Stamkos.
Is that good?
What a way to do it.
Do you know who's not on that list? Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. Steven Stamkos better than both of them, confirmed. Just saying.
And I do want to give props to the Vancouver fan base who were cheering and really got behind Stamkos. I mean, we went into pretty good depth of what that organization is going through last week, recapping that game, and it's just been a dumpster fire over there. So having the fans be in good spirits for a team that came in and they got to see a milestone like that. We'll go more into what happened during the game, but of course Stamkos got that hat trick, and there were fans throwing hats on the ice for him too. So good on them for being good sports about having their team getting scored on.
Yeah, absolutely. But Stamkos has been very fortunate with some of the milestones he's hit. He's had some great fan bases because he's hit a lot of his milestones in away games. He hit 60 goals in Winnipeg. His 1,000th point came in Philadelphia, and now his 500th goal has come in Vancouver. Listen, Stammer, would you score one at home for us? I mean, come on. No.
He likes those Canadian markets.
He must. But you know what's funny? I know we want to get to the game here, but there's so many cool statistics around this 500 goal that I think we'd be wrong of us not to go over it. Some cool stats that the Lightning put on here on their infographic for Stamkos' 500th goal. How many goals do you guys think Stamkos has scored at Amalie Arena? Joe, I'll start with you. How many goals has Stamkos scored at home? If you had to put a number on it.
If I had to put a number, I'm going to go with he's above 500 on that. So I'll say 300 goals.
Okay. All right. And Matt, what about you?
Well, I just have to be the contrarian here, so I'm going to say 299. He's scored more on the road. I'm going to bet that. So I'm going to say 249 at Amalie Arena.
Oh man, you guys basically split the difference. So the total number is 261. So right in the middle of that, 261 at Amalie Arena. Second place, by the way, is Florida Live Arena at 21 goals. And then TD Garden was 16, PNC Arena at 12, and Scotiabank Arena at 12 goals as well. So most obviously the goals coming at home, but 261 he has scored in front of the Lightning faithful.
I do like seeing that TD Garden was up there as one of the tops.
Yep.
And one of the craziest things to me is that the goalie he has scored the most goals against is Carey Price.
Yep.
That speaks volumes right there. That's pretty
19
incredible.
19 goals against Carey Price. By the way, second in that list is Tuukka Rask at 15. Some of these don't surprise you because they are more teams that they've played against a lot, but he actually has scored against Marc-Andre Fleury 11 times. He's up there on that list. And then Henrik Lundqvist as well, 12. So some big names on that goaltender list that he scored against quite a bit. So some cool stuff to look at there. And the last thing I want to talk about for Stamkos is 500 goals before we move on to more in depth on how the Lightning played in this game. Also, we have to talk about all of the assists that Stamkos picked up along the way, because, you know, as I'm sure Stamkos would tell you, it's not just about him. There are a lot of people that helped him along the way. I don't know if you guys remember this because I talked about it with you when Stamkos first hit that marker, but who do you think has the most assists on a Stamkos goal? And that can be primary or secondary. And we'd love to hear what you guys at home have to say too. Let us know. Tag us at RBLR Sports on social media. Let us know what you think some of these answers are and see if you can get them right. But what do you guys think for the most assists on a Stamkos goal? I don't know if you guys remember that.
I can't answer this one faithfully. I know who it is. So, Joe, do you want to take a
Joe,
crack
do you
at
remember
it if
who
you
it
don't
is?
know?
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember who, and I remember the number. What's funny is before. So if you guys haven't seen the graphic that Jake put out, it's got the list of every single player that has assisted in his goals, and it was a heck of a lot of work for him to put in this graphic. Where can they find that?
So on Twitter at the Bolt Report is where you can find it. Bolt Report _TB.
Yeah, and that thing got passed around pretty quickly, all through Reddit and different Facebook groups. It was a really, really good job that you put together. But there was quite a few surprises on that list, things that I didn't anticipate seeing, and had some fun with trivia with some of my friends asking as you're putting those together. So yeah, I mean, I definitely do know the answer to that if we want to throw it out there.
Yeah. So the answer to that question is Marty St. Louis at 101 assists, although Hedman, Kucherov are both very close as they sit at 96 assists. So it won't be long that he holds that title, but Marty is the one with the most assists on a Steven Stamkos goal. And you guys are absolutely right. There are some really weird names. I love seeing the reaction to everybody talking about this. A lot of people were saying that it brought up a lot of memories for them, for some of the older players. One of the most surprising things, I think you guys will agree with me on this, is some of the current on the team that don't have an assist on a Stamkos goal, like Andrei Vasilevsky. Even though he's a goalie, you think, oh, okay, maybe not. But Vasi's been on the team for a while, yet he doesn't have an assist on a Stamkos goal, and there's some other goalies that do.
Lindback has one.
The other two,
exactly.
Yeah, I didn't. That was one of the ones I thought was fun. Was which goalies did have assists. The other two, Garan had an assist, and then talking about a blast from the past, Kerry Ramo had an assist on there, which who would ever have guessed?
There's some wild ones, and even I saw people saying like Steve Downey was a surprise to them because he has 19, which is up there on the higher number of assists.
But specifically with goalies, we had some of the best puck handling goalies in the league with Mike Smith and Ben Bishop, and Vasi's no slouch, but none of them have points on them.
It's a really interesting list. I highly recommend you guys go check it out if you haven't seen it yourself, and try and see if you can find the Easter egg that's in there too. I had a little bit of fun with throwing that out there as well. So be sure to go check that out and see if you can find the little Easter egg. But let's talk about the game overall in this one against Vancouver. The Lightning got off to a really good start in this one. They went up, scored a bunch of goals, and then it felt like Vancouver started to climb back into it a little bit towards the end. But of course, the Lightning sealed it off and got that 5-2 win. Matt, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the overall play of the Lightning in this game against Vancouver after Stamkos picks up his 500th?
It was eerily similar to the game that they played at Amalie Arena against the Canucks earlier, or I want to say last week. They just come out guns a-blazing, and then just gradually throughout the game, they get a little complacent. I still think overall it was a really good game. I thought Brian Elliott was actually fantastic throughout the game. He played really well and kept them in for a good portion of it. Vancouver, again, despite them having a pretty depressing season. I mean, they're still putting it all out there. They're still trying to claw their way up, make some kind of dent and make some kind of statement against a good team like the Lightning. But I think it was an actually, of course, the best game this week so far, but a pretty complete game. Again, they did reel off a little bit towards the end and still having an issue closing games out, but I'd say overall, I'm happy. I'm impressed with their performance, especially given how much, where they were on this road trip as well, how far they've had to travel. There's a lot of factors I did have to take into account when grading this game. So I'd say they performed rather well, especially Steven Stamkos. Man, it's hard for me to just think about the game itself when that milestone, that monument just kind of overshadows the rest of it as well. So no, again, overall, I thought they played well, but still almost facing some of the same issues that they've been having that we're still seeing in later on this week.
Well, this was the first game of the back-to-back that they had, and you don't get much more explosive of a first period as putting 4 goals in and chasing the opposing netminder out before the end of the period. And with that, where do you kind of go from there? It's hard to keep focus. It's hard to keep your momentum going. And they did kind of coast. I don't think there was any scoring at all. Yeah, no scoring at all in the second period. And then the Elliott shutout was spoiled with about 10 minutes left, where it was a hard shot from point and from the point man Hughes, and then tipped in front by Kuzmenko. So it was a higher slot tip. It's really hard to not only defend against those, but obviously make the save. But that stinks for Elliott that he didn't get the shutout. It would have been the first shutout this season for a Lightning goalie. But overall, I mean, they played, I thought, pretty well through the stretch. I mean, considering they went up so fast and had such a milestone, even in the locker room after the game, you saw during their interviews, they're drinking beers while giving some statements to the media there.
They were excited for their captain to finally hit that milestone. Although, unfortunately, I think the beers might have been a bad idea, as this was the first half of back-to-back, and they had to go all the way to Edmonton, and it was not as great of a game for the Lightning as it was in Vancouver. They unfortunately lose this one by a final score of 5-3. That last goal, an empty net, though. So really, it was a 4-3 game. This one, though, guys, it felt like a winnable game. I mean, the Lightning went down early 2-0 after the end of that first period, but then they come back and they do eventually take a lead in this game. Or I'm sorry, they come back and they make it 2-1. They eventually tie the game, and then Edmonton takes the lead off a Connor McDavid goal, because of course it was Connor McDavid, and the Lightning can't come back after that goal by McDavid in the third period and drop this one by a final score of 5-3. Again, the power play 0 for 2 in this one. The penalty kill went 3 for 4, not too bad. 55% in the faceoff circles and 31 shots on goal compared to Edmonton's 34. But it even though it was a close game, it felt like this one was a little frustrating. I think that's where Cooper's head was at after the game, as he talked about. They didn't play terrible. They did a lot of good things. They got back into this game, but unfortunately, they just weren't able to pick up at least a point by getting this one into overtime. Matt, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Edmonton game here?
I like the way you put it, Jake. It was a winnable game for sure. And again, they didn't start off, as best as they should have. It's really hard to shut down Connor and Leon. Of course, that's priority number one, is figuring out a way to, okay, first things first, let's get them in check and then worry about the offense later. You're not going to win any games by letting them run all over you. And I thought they did a pretty decent job until they found themselves in a little bit of penalty trouble. And then things, it didn't hit the fan, but it just wasn't as contained as they would have liked it. Come back strong in the second. They had a great second period. I thought, if we're looking at just that 20-minute segment, they were definitely the better team in the second. And then in the third period, with all the momentum on, at their backs, they've got the wind in their sails. They've got every reason to come back and win this game. for whatever reason, nothing was going on. I'm not sure what it was. I don't think Edmonton was playing the greatest shutdown prevent defense, but the Lightning just did not have it in them. I don't know. Maybe they had a couple too many beers the night before in the locker room, but just something about that third period. They couldn't get much of anything going on. They had their chances here and there, but in the last 10 minutes, it was pretty weak. It was meager. I didn't see anybody that really wanted it. Everybody was just, I don't know, kind of meandering. And it's not that Edmonton shut them down. I just don't think they weren't using their speed. They weren't passing great. They're holding their sticks a little too tight. Whatever you want to say. It's just the game did definitely slip out of their hands and that they just couldn't do anything with the man advantage with the empty net. So this game was pretty out of reach as soon as the third period started. I wish I could tell you what it was, why they just completely laid out flat in the entire third period, but especially towards the end. But it was a disappointing end to what was a great, very entertaining game. Don't get me wrong. It was a really hell of a fun game until the third period.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of that back-to-back where they just didn't have as much energy, and it's really hard to match speed with somebody that's as quick as Connor McDavid when you don't have all of your gears ready to go there. Like you said, that they had the potential, they just couldn't actually deliver on it. And I don't know, this was one of the games that I was willing to kind of look at and let go, especially on the night after such a big night for the team, and back-to-back let one slide, and that's kind of the way it felt like it happened in the third. They kind of just let it slide away, but that's closing out games as well, right? If you go into the third with a tie, you got to close out your games, and this seems to unfortunately be a little bit of a repeating trend that we're talking about here.
Connor McDavid, man, he's got so much speed, and the Lightning actually did a good job at holding him for the most part until that third period where you got that game-winning goal. Andrei Vasilevsky, he had dare I say, an all-star looking save on Connor McDavid with that flying poke check, which, by the way, if our listeners, if they want to look like an all-star just like Andrei Vasilevsky did, you can head over to shop.RBLR Sports and use code BOLTS to get 10% off your order. We've got some awesome merch over there for you guys to check out. Lightning theme merch, Rays, Rowdies, Bucks, you name it, we got it. So be sure to head over there to shop.rblrsports.com and use code BOLTS for 10% off your order as well. Had to throw that in there for our boy Andrei Vasilevsky looking so good, and then that as well. But it was a tough game. It was a fun game. You're right, Matt, but just a disappointing ending there at the end. And unfortunately, they can't come away with the extra points there in that one. That's been a thing for the Lightning. I've noticed when you look at the standings, teams like Toronto, a lot of the other teams in the other conferences as well, they're above the Lightning in the standings because they have all these overtime losses. The Lightning can't seem to lose in extra time. They have one loss in a shootout this year. And it technically kind of hurts them in the standings a little bit. Luckily, they're still in third place because they've got 29 wins, but not losing in overtime is kind of been an issue standings wise for the Bolts.
Well, in a spot like that where you're tied going into the third, it definitely would have been nice to take 1 point away from that game.
Right. Exactly. In a game where they came back and played well, which, by the way, Point had an amazing goal in that game where he deflected that puck right on net. Beautiful goal. Have to give that a shout out as well. The Lightning would then leave Edmonton a little disappointed, but they would head into Calgary where they were looking to hope to maybe bounce back. But unfortunately, this was a rough one for them as they lose this one by a final score of 6-3. That score sounds a lot worse. The Lightning did come within one, but a couple empty net goals is what gives the Flames that 6-3 win. The Lightning power play, not good in this one. They went 0 for 6, which is not what you want to see. The penalty kill, again, goes 3 for 4, so not too. But there was a moment in this game, guys, where the Lightning, they took 3 penalties in a row, and Calgary eventually did score on one of them. That's something you just cannot do. And I believe that is when they had the game tied, and then the Flames took a lead, if I'm not mistaken. So some costly penalties. It felt like they were kind of behind for a lot of this game, but even still, they were at one point tied, and they also they had a chance to tie the game again late in the third period. When it was 4-3. So another frustrating game for the Lightning. Can't get any points out of it. And it kind of puts a damper on what started off as an excellent road trip. The Lightning still do come away with more points than games, which was their goal at the start. But I feel like a disappointing end to this road trip. Joe, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on this overall road trip and this game in specific.
This game, I'll keep it relatively short because I was basically watching it from my cell phone while we were staged up for the Gasparilla parade, waiting to take off there. So
that's a true Lightning fan right there. Even when we were getting ready for the Gasparilla parade, he got the game on his phone.
On the float, watching it before we take off. Luckily, it was that earlier start. The problem is it just wasn't a start that was any good for the Lightning. They did, like you said, take a lead, and I watched quite a bit of the game before shutting it off once we started rolling there. But the excuse that I wanted to use for Edmonton, where the guys just looked like they were tired, or it was the end of a road trip, almost kind of felt like it crept into this one from what I was seeing as well. Stupid mistakes. That's way too many penalty minutes. The previous game, I think that they also had a bunch of. Let's see, do I still have it up? I closed it, but they had a bunch of penalties as well, and you're going to get burned when you give that many opportunities to the opposition. Let's see, where is it? The Nemesnikov goal. I thought for sure that was a kick, but I'm also watching it on a screen that's about this big, so I was happy to see that I was wrong on that. But he gets his goal, which really glad to see him continue to put him up on the score sheet there. It's his 4th of the season, so that's at least a good takeaway from the game. And just to recap the week, I'll go with a recap of the trip overall. It's better performance than they had in some of the other extended road trips.
This game was frustrating. Last week I talked about frustrating wins. This was a frustrating loss. This might be, honestly, in my opinion, my least favorite game of the year. This game did nothing for me other than just drive me nuts. It was they started off just getting caved in. They had zero momentum, zero drive. Calgary was running away with it and got an early lead, and then they get themselves into penalty trouble. I think the first Nazem Kadri goal, I think that one came on. Was that a power play goal? I think it was, but even after that, and it was a quick goal too. I want to say within the first 30 seconds of the power play, but after that, Kucherov takes a trip or a slash, and then Bogo comes over and adds an extra penalty along with that. And that just not playing smart, just really getting flustered and not maintaining poise and composure was a really big issue for me in this entire game. They're just letting their emotions get the better of them. One thing that I didn't realize is how much I miss Blake Coleman and how crucial he was to this team for only being with this team for such a short amount of time. It still seems like, he was with us for multiple years. He was driving me nuts this game. Calgary did a great job of getting under everybody's skin, including mine. I thought they played a really good game, mixing in with the Lightning just playing a really bad game. There's games where we're just getting outplayed. We're trying our best, but we're just getting outplayed. This game was on two different ends. Calgary playing great, Lightning playing awful. There were no passes that were connecting. Everybody just seemed out of position. There were so many just momentary lapses of judgment, bad positioning everywhere. The only person I can say that had an actually strong, really good game, despite the score, was Vasilevsky. He kept them in this game way longer than they should have been. If you guys can't tell, I am still just the tiniest bit flustered about this game because I think it was a dismal performance. You guys don't typically see me like this. I don't know if you agree with me at all. But this game was pathetic. It's probably, to me, one of their worst losses this year. I know, Jake, just from the look on your face, you don't share the same sentiment, and I get it. At least we're losing, away from home to a team it doesn't necessarily matter to. It's the last time we're going to see them this year. I guess it all evens out in the wash, but still, it's like it's a little frustrating. Again, it's one thing if you're just not putting in, your A game, you're tired. It's another thing if you're just completely lazy and unenthused and just out of it completely, which is what they were this game. I couldn't hardly recognize the team. I'm sorry if I rambled on a little bit, if I still am just very amped up about it, but it was just.
I agree. Like, I get it. It was frustrating. And like I said, it really did put a damper on what was a good road trip for the Lightning up until that point. I just wouldn't call it their worst loss of the season. That's where I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. For as bad as it was, the game was 4-3 with a couple minutes to go there late, and they had a chance to maybe tie it. So they kept themselves in it. But you're right. They did take a lot of penalty trouble that was unnecessary. And I don't know if it was just them wanting to be back home or what it was, but there was definitely some issues that creeped in. And like Joe kind of said, it felt like what it was with the Edmonton game is they were just kind of tired. And I don't know what was going on there, but I don't think it was the worst loss of the season.
The good news is that it was at the end of a road trip where they're going to have a nice reset coming back home. And then if things do for some reason continue to deteriorate, not to look too far ahead here, but there's also going to be a big span where they're going to get off for basically all-star weekend. And, that's a nice time to reset and refocus, recenter, and get back on track.
And to answer the second half of your question, Jake, asking about the road trip in general, it was a successful trip in my opinion. I'm happy with the result coming away, from it over 500. But to me, we'll elaborate on this in some further weeks. Probably not this episode, but to me, this was a scouting trip. We played two teams who I think the Lightning are looking at players on, which will be St. Louis and Vancouver. To me, again, they don't predetermine, or they do predetermine the schedule, so it wasn't legitimate scouting trip, but I think, killing two birds with one stone, getting to see players in their home environment and how they're playing. I think a lot of focus was going on certain players on these teams in St. Louis and Vancouver. I don't think Calgary is going to be selling, and even if they are, I don't think the Lightning are going to be buying from them. So that was another thing that I just want to make clear is I think it was a scouting journey.
Yeah. Hey, like and subscribe so you don't miss out on some future episodes where we get more into details on who the Lightning could be going after in the trade deadline. You can follow us at RBLR Sports on social media as well, so you don't miss out on future episodes. But with that said, let's jump into our 3 stars of the week. And guys, this was a little tough to pick, I thought, for this week, as he had that tough end of the road trip, which is most of the games for this week. But here are our 3 stars of the week. We're going to start off with number 3, and that's going to Anthony Cirelli, who had 1 goal and an assist for 2 total points this week. Guys, he wasn't the best player out there, obviously, but I thought he had a pretty good week overall, had a really nice goal in one of the games, and just it's nice to have him back. And I felt like this was one of his better games since he's been back, or better weeks, I should say, since he's been back. Joe, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on Anthony Cirelli picking up the 3rd star of the week?
Well, considering the losses that the teams just went through, he got a goal against Calgary, and he got an assist against Edmonton, which is better than most of the team. So, get some accolades for that one. Can't always have the superstars doing all the heavy lifting here.
Absolutely right. Matt, what about you? Thoughts on Cirelli for the 3rd star?
It's a pretty weak week, I suppose, but he in choosing these stars, I would say that he was somebody who you didn't notice a whole lot. He was somebody who always seemed like where he was supposed to be, where he should be, and then also adding the scoring touch, getting an assist, getting a goal, especially a pretty a clutch goal. Everybody knows Tony Cirelli is Captain Clutch, just behind Braden Point, who's Admiral Clutch. But yeah, he showed up when we needed him to, but he was also very defensively sound. Despite the power play not being able to get their cookies, I thought the PK was all right this week. So to me, yeah, he was deserving of this 3rd star.
In a week where maybe they were more successful, maybe he wouldn't have made it, but it was a tougher week, to be honest with you, to pick these guys. But I thought he was good. I thought he was good this week. And as to be fair to Cirelli, he's only had 3-4 weeks. It hasn't been that long since he's been back from injury, right? So he's still trying to get into he's not even in midseason form yet. So good for him to have a good week here, and he gets the 3rd star of the week. Moving on to the 2nd star, that's going to go none other than to Braden Point. Point had another great week because of course he did. He had 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 total points. We talked about that amazing goal he had against Edmonton, and Point continuing to show off his speed and his athletic ability. This guy is just unbelievable. I would even say he got snubbed from the All-Star game. Matt, what do you think?
Well, as of right now, he's the hottest player in the league. And he's also playing great hockey too. But no, Braden Point again. Seriously, he is one of the one of the players that is just on fire right now, and I'm happy to see the hot stick continue. Going back to Calgary, his hometown or just outside of his where he grew up. He had some great chances in that game, but the one tip-in goal, if you even want to call it that, against Edmonton, that was a beauty tip. It was a lot more difficult than it looked, but again, how many more times can I reiterate the same message, week after week after week? Point's got to slow down because I'm running out of words to say about him, but he is just Mr. Consistent, it seems like, ever since he's turned it on this year. Again, a little bit of a slow start, and then after that slow start, he's just been white hot. So again, good to see him. The hot stick continues. Unfortunately, he couldn't have scored 6 goals each game or nothing like that, but consistency is key, and that's what he's been the last couple of weeks, and he's been as consistent as the sunrise. So,
and I'm looking at his stats right now, and in that Edmonton game, he did have 7 shots on net, which is a lot higher than I would have guessed, and I'm pretty sure that would be the team high for the game. So he didn't have an unproductive outing. He had 2 points in it, and although it shows that he's a -3 for Calgary, 2 of those were the empty net goals that went in. So he was still doing his best defensively in that game. And you said it really well, Matt. You run out of words to say about a guy that's so explosive. And we have a segment coming up where I look forward to venting a little bit more about that and Braden Point.
Imagine if this was like an Oilers podcast and we had to do our stars of the week, and it's McDavid again, first star.
For the 800th time in a row. Hey, you know what? That's a good problem to have. I'm sure Edmonton fans are complaining about that. Let's go to our number 1 star of the week, and I bet you guys can't guess who this one is. Who else but then the captain, Steven Stamkos. He had 5 points this week, and they were all goals. 5 goals for him, and of course, the big one there as he hits 500 goals this week as well in that game against Vancouver. The captain just being the best player around. Guys, it's truly amazing what he's been able to do. People talked about him being washed up, maybe ready to retire. Maybe the Lightning should move on from him. And he has come out here and said, I am still in my prime. I can still score goals, still score points. And he's been unbelievable for the 2nd year in a row now. And he's hit so many milestones this year. So very deserving. Steven Stamkos, the 1st star of the week. Joe, your thoughts on Stammer?
Well, talk about opening up the floodgates for struggling so long to just get those final 3 goals to get him to the 500. And then he puts in 5 as soon as he hits it, scoring in versus Edmonton and Calgary. He's our captain, and man, what a week for him from a productivity standpoint. I hope he really does keep up the goal scoring, because he was probably gripping that stick a little tight, looking for number 500. That tap in goal that Kaloran fed him. He kind of nursed it in there, right? It wasn't one where he had to shoot too hard, or he had a pretty big space that he could work with.
Hey, it was the hockey IQ for him to go right in front of the net and be ready for it, right?
Well, I think it was also
on the ice.
I think it was also the smart play from the Harvard guy to set it up, right? With
Absolutely.
Kaloran.
Absolutely.
Alex Kaloran went to Harvard?
I don't know if you've heard this.
No. When it rains, it pours with Stamkos this year. I mean, again, you can't say a bad thing about him, other than his backhand passes. I'll eat that one. But when it rains, it pours. He's been a very streaky scorer this year. You guys remember from the start of the season, he had like a 7-game goal streak. He was just on fire, and then doesn't vanish for a bit. He's been very productive in his playmaking. He's racking up assists pretty consistently, but the scoring drops off, and then it surges back, and then it dropped off, and now it's surging back. So hopefully now that he's got the monkey off the back, he can just consistently score, maybe take a page out of Braden Point's book. I know Braden Point's not going to tell Steven Stamkos how to score goals, but just a little more consistency. But I'm not here to nitpick or just be negative about that. Congratulations to Steven Stamkos again. It's got to feel wonderful for not only him, but the rest of the team, his family, of course. A little bit of a shame he couldn't do it at home. But again, they're going to have a ceremony for him ahead of tomorrow's game, or I guess when you guys are listening to this, tonight's game. So they're going to have a ceremony for him, and man, he's just knocking down milestone after milestone this year. If he stays healthy, he'll crack 1,000 games this year as well. So knocking on wood right now.
The Lightning are going to put out a fantastic celebration for Stamkos. I can't wait to see what they do for that as he comes home after scoring goal number 500. So there you have it, the 3 stars of the week: Anthony Cirelli, Braden Point, and then Steven Stamkos. And of course, we'd love to hear what our listeners have to think as well. Do you agree with our list? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments or tag us on social media at RBLR Sports. Any and all thoughts are always appreciated. Moving on.
Real quick, right before we transition, something I didn't really realize until I guess I just never thought about until I heard it on the radio is that even though he's at 503 goals scored at this point, 504 goals scored.
4 because he scored 1. Yes.
Right. That's only for regular season. He also has an additional 43 goals in playoffs for goals being scored from him during an NHL game. And I didn't really necessarily recognize that it's only regular season games that they count for this, but he's got a bunch more. That
surprises me too, because I thought it was including playoffs as well. That's 500 is just regular season goals.
Just regular season. Yep, and 43 additionals, which is pretty good.
And that kind of almost takes the luster out of Alex Ovechkin possibly breaking Wayne Gretzky's record, because if you're going to count total goals, like playoffs included, Wayne's got OV beat by a good bit. But
well, at least that has been the same for everybody, and it's consistent there. But that's interesting, Joe. I did not know that. But hey, good for Stammer either way. He's got even more goals than that if you include his playoff run and some pretty important playoff goals as well. But we're going to continue talking about Stammer here for a second, actually, because we're going to talk about All-Star Weekend. So for those of you that don't know, the fan vote has ended and announced the winners of the fan vote actually during the Edmonton game, which was on ESPN. And the winners for the Atlantic Division: Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, David Pastrnak Bruins, and our very own Andrei Vasilevskiy. So Vasilevskiy and Kucherov are the ones going to represent the Lightning in this year's All-Star game down in Florida. I'm a little no, listen, I get it. The NHL, they have the rule where one player from each team's got to be in, so everybody has, some interest in it. But I think it's disappointing guys like Steven Stamkos and Braden Point don't get in, just because of the way that it's kind of formatted here. When you got a guy like Stamkos who's hit his 1,000th point mark, 500 goals, he's been on a tear this season as well. He's a guy that I think totally is deserving to go to the All-Star game, but the Lightning do have 2 players going in Kucherov and Andrei Vasilevskiy as well. So Matt, what do you think about the selections for the All-Star and our Bolts representing us down there in Florida?
I like it. Glad to see Cooch back at the All-Star game. He was injured last year, or else he would have made it. I just want to let you know this. I'm sure you already know. The votes didn't matter. They did not count a single vote. Not one vote made it to the NHL offices. Not one vote was counted. And
Matt,
I'm not
are you
necessarily
accusing of collusion here.
Yes. And again, I'm not upset. I'm happy to see, Kucherov and Vasilevskiy be the last man in, but these votes didn't count. So I am definitely kind of ashamed at the NHL. I know they don't want another John Scott situation, even though everybody wants another John Scott situation. But if we were going by actual votes and all the Twitter retweet votes and all that, I don't think Vasilevsky would have been voted in. I don't think Pasternak would have been voted in. I think they just chose the most marketable players that weren't already selected and went with those, which are Austin Matthews, NHL cover boy, NHL golden boy, and Vasilevsky, who's a more marketable goaltender than him. Nobody argue a wall. So I'm a little disappointed with that. Of course, I'm happy that 2 of our guys made it. It could be a lot worse than that. We could only have 1 guy that made it, but that's just something I wanted to get off my chest. Joe?
I completely agree with you, and especially in the case of Pointer. He's been electric and has had highlight reel goals multiple times this season. He's putting up production numbers that I think were, well high enough to warrant putting him in the All-Star game. And I honestly don't see Vasi's numbers this season being all-star numbers. That's, like you said, a name recognition thing. Not that he's not an all-star goalie by any means. He really is. It just, he's not putting up the sort of numbers that you would typically associate for a Vasilevsky season. And Braden Point has just been playing outstanding. Another thing that I don't have it pulled up here, and I probably should have. Are there only a handful of defensemen that are 5 defensemen, and that's for both conferences, right?
That is for every. There are 5 total defensemen going to the All-Star game. There are 0 in the Atlantic and 0 in the Pacific, so they're spread out between the Metro and the Central. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean this is a first for that I can ever recall that there wasn't like a balance of defensemen to fill out a line. I understand they're not playing 5-on-5 hockey anymore, and with the 3-on-3 game, it does change the dynamic of what you really are required to have on the bench. But that also just seems a little bit weird. This All-Star game, just with who's been selected, who hasn't been selected, it does feel I'll just say bizarre.
I think that the formatting has got to do with it, right? Because when the fans voted, it was 2 skaters and then a goaltender. So I think Vasilevsky benefited from that for one, and the fact that 1 goaltender had to go, and Vasilevsky I think is better than a lot of those Atlantic Division goaltenders, maybe, and that's what maybe helped him a little bit, because I believe the other goaltender is Boston. It's Olmark,
yeah, it's
isn't it? Who got in? Yeah, so I think Vasi benefited from that, and it hurt the defensemen in that more name recognizable players might come from forwards, and people like to see scoring, so maybe that had something to do with it as well. But Matt, I'm glad you brought up that you don't think the fans would have put those in, because Jay Fresh put out a poll of his own on a completely fan voted all-star roster. And I have it pulled up here as well. Now, this is just Jay Fresh's audience. Keep that in mind. This is not, every person in the NHL fan base, obviously, but he has a pretty good sample size, I think, for the NHL fan base. But
Jay Fresh's fan base, they're hardcore hockey fans. They're hockey nerds, and I'm one of them.
Exactly. And there were 3 Lightning players that made it in his van vote, and that was Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, and Andrei Vasilevsky. So two out of 3 from his fan vote, which I do think is interesting. Boston also had 3 players. You also have Matthews and Marner on here, just like in the All-Star game. And then Florida only has 1, and Matthew Tkachuk. And Buffalo actually has 2 players on here as well, and Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin. So interesting to see the fans saying 3 players, and they don't even have Stamkos or Braden Point on this list either. So I'd be interested to see what the breakdown of that was, but just something to think about there as well. But either way, the Lightning will have 2 players representing them here at the All-Star game. And I think the All-Star game should be fun. I liked what they did with it last year. Oh, and before we move on quickly, I want to get your guys' thoughts. They revealed the All-Star jerseys. What do you guys think on those? Joe, do you like it or no?
I'm always a fan of that Miami Vice kind of theme. I think it's really cool. And then for them to be reverse retro style based on some of the ones that were, I think, in like the 90s when they had that style logo. I think it's neat. And I think it fits.
I definitely do dig them. They're not reverse retro to me. They're just straight up retro. They look very dated, which I like that. I like the appeal of that. I'm not at all criticizing that. it's nice to see a good All-Star jersey. I feel like the last good All-Star jersey were the ones that we wore in Tampa, the Sprite jerseys. I actually really liked those. But they kind of seem to be scattered pretty few and far between, through the years. So these ones definitely they get my seal of approval.
I think they look nice. I do like them overall. I'm surprised they only went with 2 different variations, and there's not going to be 4 different ones for each of the divisions. But I'm assuming, just whoever's playing, one will wear black and one will wear white. So that's probably how that will work. With that said, though, let's move on to our next segment. And this one I'm excited to talk about. It's the Lightning Hall of Fame. You heard that right. The Lightning Hall of Fame is coming to the arena next season, as the Lightning are now getting set to actually this season, I'm sorry. But the Lightning will be getting ready to induct their inaugural class for the Lightning Hall of Fame. And I'll kind of read through quickly some of the list of nominees for this first year and how this is going to work. So Marty and Vinny are already in for the Hall of Fame, since they have their numbers retired and hanging in the rafters. And then there is a set amount of people. There's 10 people the Lightning picked that will be voting on this. And then the 11th person that's voting on this is the fans, which, by the way, you can do that through the new app that the Lightning have, which they haven't marketed this a ton, which kind of surprises me. They should put this on Twitter in their little bio, but the Lightning do have a new app as well, which you can get on the Google Play iOS store as well. And that's where you're going to be able to vote for who you think should go into the Hall of Fame. And 2 of these players off these lists, or coaches, I should say, players, coaches, or people who have worked in the organization, are going into the Hall of Fame. Keep in mind as well, there were some rules that these players had to qualify for. For example, they had to be on the team, I think, for at least 3 years, and then they had to be retired for a certain number of years as well. So if you don't hear a player that you think should be on here, there's a couple of reasons why they might not be on here. But here's the list that fans will have the chance to choose from, and 2 of these players are going to go into the first inaugural Hall of Fame, along with Vinny and Marty. So we have Dave Andrewchuk, Brian Bradley, Terry Crisp, Phil Esposito, Jay Feaster, Ruslan Fedotenko, Pavel Kubina, Frederick Modine, Henry Paul, Rick Peckham, Brad Richards, and Rob Zomer. I totally butchered that, so I apologize. But that is your list for the first set of voting. So, Joe, I'll start with you. Who is your pick for 2 players that you're going to vote into the Hall of Fame?
Number 1, without a doubt, is Phil Espo. Without Esposito, we wouldn't have a team. If you ever listened to him on the radio, you've probably gained a lot of insight to the game as well. I mean, he's been a great educator, and he's done so much. I mean, he's done everything to bring a team here, to be clear, but to stick with the team, year in, year out, being part of the organization. I mean, he's number 1 in my book. Also, I think that Jay Feaster should definitely get a solid look by the fans. He's the GM that put together the 2003 for Lightning team, and made a relatively rough organization turn them into something completely to be proud of. So they're not players, but those are the guys that I think have made huge impacts for, I mean, again, not only just the Tampa Bay Lightning organization, but for the Tampa Bay area in general.
And Matt, what about you? Who do you have for your picks to go to the Hall of Fame in the inaugural class?
Definitely Barry Melrose.
Man, you jokester.
I was confused at this list. I thought all these people made it. So
no.
I am mistaken. On a real note, of course, Esposito, first overall pick. Definitely Phil. And a little biased here, Rick Peckham. That would be my second pick. There's plenty of good names to choose from for sure, but I've just got a soft spot for Rick Peckham. I don't know. He definitely deserves a spot. I don't know if he'll get it. He'll be getting one of my votes, but there's definitely some other good names like Jay Feaster, who brought us our first Stanley Cup, like Terry Crisp. Plenty of good names. I was definitely surprised when I first saw the list. Again, there was a lot lost in translation with me. I thought I'd see Nigel Kirwan on that list, but he still is employed by the team, so I guess he doesn't count. But
that is correct. They cannot be currently employed by the team or playing in the NHL to be on. They have to be retired, I think, for 3 or 4, which is why guys like Ben Bishop are not on this list as well, because I don't think they've met the retirement requirements just yet.
So technically Dave and Phil don't work for the Lightning. Do they work for the radio station that they're on?
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, actually, because I don't think Rick Peckham does anything anymore. Phil Esposito still technically works a lot with the team, but it's also Phil Esposito. How can you not have him on this inaugural list? Maybe they made an exception for him, I would say, would be my guess there.
It's also, he's probably not going to be going in as a radio broadcaster. He'd be going in as a builder, if you will, if they're even going to put titles to that. So that he was the dumb question by me.
No, hey, every question I think is important. By the way, my picks for this is Dave Andreychuk and Phil Esposito. Those are the two picks for me. Rick Peckham's a close third. I would put him in on the next one. And this is
Dave Andreychuk's already got a statue, man.
Well, hey, Phil Esposito has a statue too, and he's got to go.
Fair.
This is something they're going to be doing every year. But look at that, Joe! You guys can't see it, unfortunately, but he's got a statue of. Where did you get that? I'm gonna have to get mine.
This was one of the giveaways. You can't see it. It was you get bobblehead night, but this was the Phil Esposito night. His hockey stick's not in his hand right now. He's missing his hands. But they gave away when I think it was the night that they unveiled the statue. They gave away these little ceramic copies of the Phil Esposito statue that's outside.
Love that. I'm gonna have to go find one for myself, and I hope they do a Dave Andreychuk one.
What's your address and what time do you go to work?
You may have heard my dogs bark in the background. Probably not a good idea to come here after off hours.
So yeah, Dave Andreychuk and Phil Esposito are my picks for this. By the way, voting starts today, actually, as of this recording. So head over to the new Tampa Bay Lightning app, which is where you can vote for this, again, on the iOS and Google Play Store. There's also a bunch of other things you can do in the app. Basically, think of the NHL app, but just Lightning. You can get your tickets on there. You can look at the upcoming schedule, stats, all that fun stuff. So be sure to go check out the new app and go vote. This is something we'll be doing every year, so there'll be a lot more people to be joining the first inaugural class, but super exciting. I'm glad the Lightning have done this. I remember we talked about this a while back. I did an article on this on the Bolt Report over there as well, on the Lightning need a Hall of Fame and who I think should be in there. So exciting stuff. Last thing I want to ask you guys on this Hall of Fame, bonus points to you guys if you know this one. Who is Henry Paul? Do you guys know that name? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know who he is.
That one was foreign to me. Completely honest, do not know.
Matt, any idea?
I concede I've got no clue. Is he Nick Paul's dad?
When I first read it, I did not know who the heck it was. I had to look it up. But Henry Paul helped found the team with Phil Esposito when the first team first came in. So that is who Henry Paul is. I don't know if he gets in. I'd be surprised. I definitely don't think he's going to get a lot of votes from the fans, but they picked 10 other people to help select these along with the fans. Dave Mishkin is one of them, by the way. I do know that much. So it'll be interesting to see who gets in and who they keep putting in year in after year. But really exciting stuff there from the Lightning and starting the Hall of Fame. By the way, the inductions are happening on Alumni Weekend, which is going to be the game against the Montreal Canadiens. I don't remember exactly when that game is, but that is coming up later this year. So another thing to look forward as well. All right, last thing we're going to do here is quickly look at what games we have upcoming this week for the Lightning. 3 games for the Bolts this week. First off, they're going to be taking on the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild are 7th in the West right now, 25-16-4. And then the big game probably that everybody has circled, they're taking on the Boston Bruins. Of course, they are first in the East, first in the NHL at 37-5-4. They are on pace to break a lot of records. And then, of course, they will finish off this homestand against the LA Kings, who are 5th in the West at 26-17-6. So the big game there, it's the Boston Bruins game. The Lightning have been beat by the Bruins 2 times so far, but this one at Amalie Arena, so a chance for the Lightning to show the Bruins that being in first place doesn't mean you're going to have success later on, and hopefully they can take it to the Bruins. But Matt, what are your thoughts on the upcoming schedule here?
This is a pretty big homestand here. Of course, that Minnesota loss is still fresh in my mind. That was a pretty disappointing loss to me. So I would love to see a decent bounce back performance and actually, make it a game and keep it a game. Minnesota's a great team, but yeah, the real measuring stick here will be the Boston Bruins. I would hope that the Lightning can, actually show up. Sounds so bad, but play a game with them. I truly think that, playing good teams brings the best out of the Lightning, especially playing the Bruins. And for whatever reason, if I had the stats to back me up, I always feel like they play the Bruins better in the last 2 games. I feel like the Bruins always get the better of us in the first 2 games, and then the last 2 games of the year, we always play the Bruins pretty well. So I've got a good feeling. I think being back at home is really going to help the boys out. I can't imagine the Bruins magic is going to last for too long. So I've got a really good feeling about this upcoming game against Boston. And the LA Kings, do not take them lightly. They are a very good team. They can score on you. They can defend. And now that they've got Phoenix Copley tending the goal, who's actually been a great revelation for them. It's a team you should not take lightly. They can attack you from all areas and will make you pay for it. But again, the Boston Bruins are coming into town, and I think the Lightning are going to send a pretty decent message. I'm very confident on that one.
And this game against Minnesota, it's like you said, it's kind of a rematch or a time to get some reckoning for what happened earlier this year. Earlier this year is in 23. It was on the 4th of this month where they lost 5-1. And hopefully they take that energy that, from being back at starting this homestand, getting off the road, and get their ducks in a row to just play their full 60-minute game that they can. As boring as it sounds to say the word consistency again, just get a nice, consistent game going and shut it down in the third where you don't allow these late period games, 10 minutes left, where you're starting to let them come back. And if they can do that for Minnesota, who isn't a terrible team, they're playing pretty well. I think they can carry that style of play into the game versus Boston. And, we've all said that's the game to really look for this week that we're all going to be looking at. The Kings aren't playing poorly either. They're 5th in the West. So these next 3 games are going to be tough, and hopefully it's also the opportunity for them to start putting games away like they should.
It's going to be a fun week to watch, that's for sure. And all these games at home, of course, at Amalie Arena. That's going to do it for us, guys, in this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening here another week. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you may be listening. You guys, favor, giving us a 5-star rating really helps us out. We really appreciate it. With that said, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Go Bolts!
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.